Well, hello friends, and welcome to the January astrology forecast. 2025 is going to be a year we'll remember, and January kicks it off with some fascinating cosmic contradictions. Those New Year's resolutions, they might need a cosmic reality check. I'm Tony Howard, and in today's forecast, we're going to dive into some aspects that you'll want to hear about as you make your January plans. Right now and through 2025, the outer planets are shifting in unprecedented ways, ushering in a whole new era, and we'll explore all of that in our March summit at Astrology University. But right now, let's talk about something more immediate, why you might be feeling a disconnect between that new year, new me energy and what the planets are actually calling for. Here's the thing, while you're writing down those ambitious resolutions,
I am gonna do one thing I have never done before. That, my friends, is my New Year's resolution.
we're actually in the middle of both Mars and Jupiter retrograde. That's like trying to sprint forward while the universe is asking you to slow dance. Not exactly the fresh start energy that we typically associate with January, right? But before you crumple up that resolution list, let's use this cosmic climate to our advantage. Mars retrograde isn't about stopping your plans, it's about making sure they're truly yours. Let's do a quick resolution audit together. Grab your list and ask yourself, is this truly my goal or someone else's expectation? Am I chasing this for Instagram or for my own satisfaction? Does this really light a fire in my belly or does it just look good on paper? Drop a fire emoji in the comments if you're feeling this Mars energy shaking up your plans. And since Jupiter's also retrograde, let's go deeper. During Jupiter's retrograde, this giant planet asks, will this goal expand my horizons or just my to-do list? Is it meaningful or just impressive? And with the Jupiter-Saturn square in this mix, we also want to ask, do I actually have the resources to make this dream happen? How realistic is this big idea? Do I really have time for it? Or am I taking on a little too much? For those of you who want to dive deeper into this Mars retrograde journey, I have a special webinar coming up and you can check out the link in the description. But first, let me share something fascinating about Mars that's making this January even more intriguing. Mars retrograde's about to get really interesting because it's also going out of bounds. If you haven't heard that term before, imagine Mars as a basketball player. Usually planets stay within the court boundaries set by the sun's path. But sometimes Mars jumps into the stands and breaks free from those normal limits. And that's exactly what's happening starting this January. Mars will stay out of bounds all month and in fact all the way until April 7th. So what does that mean for us? Well, when Mars goes out of bounds, it's like its energy gets supercharged. And we can see this clearly in the charts of two remarkable athletes who were born with natal Mars out of bounds. Take Michael Phelps, for example, who was born with Mars out of bounds in Cancer conjunct his sun. He's currently one of the most decorated Olympians of all time. He won 28 Olympic medals, with 23 of them gold. He didn't just break records, he shattered them. Or look at Tiger Woods, also born with Mars out of bounds in Gemini and retrograde conjunct his midheaven. To date, he has 82 PGA Tour wins, 15 major championships, and an incredible 683 weeks as world #1. These athletes pushed past what seemed humanly possible. But, and this is crucial, both Phelps and Woods also showed us the shadow side of Mars out of bounds. Both faced their share of controversies and personal struggles as a result of their Mars and their expression of their Mars. And that's because Mars out of bounds can make your inner 2-year-old want to come out to play. You know, it's that part of us that wants what it wants, when it wants it, with no thought about the consequences. The good news is that we can work with that energy consciously. When Mars is out of bounds, we might find ourselves able to push past our normal limits. Maybe we beat that personal record at the gym, or we finally stand up for ourselves at work, or we push through previous blockages. The key is to channel this energy with intention. But here's the warning label. Without awareness, we might push too far. Maybe we ignore our body's signals and we end up with an injury at that workout. Or we get so focused on our own goals that we steamroll over other people's needs. In the collective, when Mars is out of bounds, we've all watched as some people go rogue and fly off the handle. In a fit of temporary frustration or anger, they lash out at others, sometimes sometimes with disastrous consequences. But it doesn't always have to be this way. Remember, we're not at the mercy of the planets. Think of Mars out of bounds like having access to a superpower. Yeah, you could use that power recklessly, but you could also use it to break through personal barriers that have been holding you back. You can feel angry and hold your tongue. You can know what you want and consider its impact on others. The real question is, what limits in your life need to be challenged right now? And maybe equally important, what boundaries need to stay firmly in place? With Mars retrograde at the same time, we still have that invitation to turn inward and regroup. It's a good time to embrace the call to slow down rather than to fight against it. You know how sometimes a setback actually sets you up for an even bigger comeback? Well, that's a hidden gift of Mars retrograde. In fact, in my upcoming webinar, I'm going to share an inspiring comeback story that's timed perfectly with Mars retrograde, and I'm also going to share some fascinating insights about how Mars opposite Pluto can transform frustration into fuel for growth, because that's on the calendar this month too. But let's check in. You've been riding this Mars retrograde wave for about a month now. What's coming up for you? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Are you feeling some of that friction or some of that slowdown? And if so, what are those things teaching you about yourself? Well, let's keep Mars in mind, but let's add Mercury into this mix. Let me just set the stage leading up to Mercury's opposition with Mars this month. Mercury stationed direct in December, and it's now moving ahead. But we're going to sense a little blip in that forward movement that might just feel like you're having a Mercury retrograde hangover around January 6th, when Mercury in Sagittarius squares Neptune in Pisces. I've been watching this cycle for a while, and I've noticed an uptick in big-scale technological disturbances under these Mercury-Neptune aspects, like cloud service interruptions or crashes. On a personal level, with Mercury in Sagittarius facing off with Neptune, there's a caution to be careful if you've noticed yourself getting a little soapboxy or feeling overly sure that you know what you know. So mark January 6th on your calendar. This is a day that's better suited to daydreaming than it is to making some of those strong pronouncements. But a couple of days later, on January 8th, Mercury moves into Capricorn, and the vibe makes a dramatic shift into more serious and sobering territory. It's like Mercury switches from Technicolor to black and white film. Mercury in Capricorn cuts through the Sagittarius hype and starts asking the hard questions. What's the real purpose here? Is this actually valuable? And what's the long-term plan? And when Mercury faces off with our out of bounds Mars later in the month, these questions become impossible to ignore. My research into Mercury's trickster side revealed something fascinating about Mercury-Mars aspects. They often show up in the charts of master persuaders, but that same energy can manifest across a whole spectrum of expression. Let me share what Rob Hand teaches about the 3 levels of Mercury-Mars interaction. For level 1, picture the skilled manipulator, the person who consciously twists the truth for personal gain. Think of a professional grifter or a smooth-talking scammer. At level 2, we find the fierce debater, somebody who's skilled at forcefully making their case. The thing is, they don't necessarily have the integrity at this stage. They may have the facts, but they're more focused on winning the argument than defending the truth. At level 3, this is where Mercury-Mars energy really shines. This is somebody who uses their mental agility to defend what's true and right. Think of a lawyer fighting for justice, or that journalist who's exposing those important truths. With Mercury in Capricorn facing our out of bounds Mars in Cancer, we have a unique opportunity to aim for that highest expression. When you feel yourself facing off with some seemingly irrational forces, anchor yourself in what's real and tangible. And with Mercury in the mix, make sure to talk and listen. 2 questions can help you navigate this energy. What concrete evidence supports your position or theirs? And then, have you actually verified the other person's intentions? Remember, it's not just about being right here. It's about using your voice with integrity, especially when the stakes are high, but also holding space for the other person's actions, no matter how irrational they might seem at first. Well, moving on, we find Venus wading into the dreamy waters of Pisces on January 2nd, inviting us to open our hearts to love without conditions. But the story gets more complex in the middle of the month when Venus meets Saturn in a parallel and conjunction aspect around January 14th to the 18th. And Saturn might remind us right about then why boundaries are sometimes important in love. But that planetary conversation can go both ways, and Venus with Saturn could suggest rules being bent rather than broken, or compassion tempering judgment. With Venus as the planet of human connection, we could imagine the rules being softened a bit to let somebody slide, especially in order to maintain a connection. Mark January 25th in your calendar, especially if you're involved in creative work, because Venus forms a flowing trine with Mars, both in emotional water signs. This isn't just about creativity, it's about accessing Eros, that vital life force that sparks creative action. When these planets harmonize in water signs, they can help us tap into a deep emotional current that enriches our creative process. Then as we round out January, Jupiter has a significant moment. If you caught last month's video, you know we've been working with Jupiter retrograde energies. Now we're approaching a closing trine between Jupiter and the Sun, and they'll both be in air signs. And this aspect invites us to revisit those hopeful visions that we might have had back in October, but now with a new potential. If we've aligned with the Jupiter retrograde process this whole time, we've probably learned something since then. Those original dreams can now be expressed in a refined form, shaped by our growing understanding of what truly aligns with our core principles, which has been one of the main intentions of this Jupiter retrograde process. Well, before we wrap up, let me share 2 promising dates for important actions this month. Remember, with Mars retrograde, it's commonly suggested to hold off on major new beginnings if you can. But if you can't wait, or your intuition is giving you a strong thumbs up, these dates will offer some cosmic support. And the first is January 8th with the waxing moon in Taurus, and some supportive aspects like the moon trine the sun trine Uranus, and Mercury sextile Venus. Well, for a quick electional lesson, you might be tempted if you look at the ephemeris by that moon trine Venus on the 7th. But Mercury is still in Sagittarius, and it's going to change signs before the moon does. Electional astrologers are usually going to advise you to wait out that major ingress or sign change before you take action in order to avoid potentially unwanted changes in direction. Well, the second date to check out is at the end of the month, with the moon in Pisces on January 30th and 31st. The supportive aspects that you can play with over these couple of days include moon conjunct Venus and Neptune, Mars trine Saturn, and Mercury trine Jupiter. Just wait at least 12 hours after the new moon, and also wait for the moon to start separating from the conjunction with Saturn. But definitely block January 31st on your calendar, and I mean block it off from everything, because it comes with an incredibly rare love bomb that's hard to match, because we have the moon conjunct Venus and Neptune all in Pisces. The next time Venus comes to Neptune's going to be in Aries. So this is absolutely the last day that we're ever going to get to experience this triple-decker, sparkly dreamscape of a combo in our lifetime. So absolutely set some time aside for meditation that taps you into the collective. Meditate on compassion. Meditate on world peace. Do heart-centered visualizations to alleviate or tap into the suffering in the world. Do something that helps you feel connected to the whole. And in your waking life, share love freely. Reach out to someone in need. Practice random acts of kindness. This is a truly rare day when the planets align for such pure unconditional love. But as always, it's up to you to steer the expression in that direction. So don't just wait it out. Take action. And with that beautiful imagery, let's close our January forecast. If you'd like to dive deeper, join us for upcoming webinars at Astrology University. Kelly Surtees will be sharing her popular annual forecast, and Mark Jones is going to continue his fresh take on the moon in the elements with the airy moon. Well, best wishes for the new year, and until next time, take good care.